Okay, I think we are live. And if we could see some sign of life in the chat box, that would be great. If you guys, there we go. Alex seems like he can hear us. Cameron, Joanna, thank you very much. Hello, good morning. Okay, Cam, William, good day. All right, no, we are live. Well, hello everyone. Thank you very much for joining us. My name is Shaheen from X Growth, and let's kick this off today. We got a really awesome event and awesome webinar. I'm joined by Tim Beveridge. Now, Tim is a leading strategic consultant. He has tremendous amount of experience, more than 20 years of experience in connecting marketing and technology and strategy together. So today we're gonna talk about a lot of things related to marketing strategy and data and how to simplify the whole picture around data. Now, Tim is also the GM of strategic consulting at Silver Bullet. Silver Bullet is a entity that both has consulting arms and also technologies of its own, where predominantly focuses on advertising technology and consulting, where they bring data and marketing together. But I am sure Tim can give us a much better introduction than I did over there. So on that note, Tim, thanks so much for joining us.
No worries. Thanks, Shaheen. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm excited to have a chat with you.
No, absolutely pleasure to having you here. But yeah, I mean, at the beginning, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Silver Bullet, like a 30-second intro?
Yeah, sure. Look, I've got some slides here. So look, this is me. I've been doing, I guess, digital marketing and digital consulting for 22 years. I've worked on the tools and off the tools. I was a web developer. Actually, I was firstly a psychologist, and then I became a web developer, or I was a psych grad, really. I didn't actually get into the psych society. But, and my expertise range across digital media, brand, advertising, consumer experience, and I've tried to learn every nook and cranny of the industry. I also have an MBA. I'm a bit of a nerd, so I code in my spare time sometimes, because technology has amazing power, and sometimes you just need to go and build something. So I do that. These are some of the brands I've worked with over my years. Lots of big brands across lots of different categories. I don't have a favorite category. I think every category is fascinating in its opportunities and strengths. I work for an organization called Silver Bullet. And so Silver Bullet is a data first company. We're a consultancy. We build, as Shaheen said, we build product, and we implement marketing technology. So this webinar is about simplification. We work at both the simplification end and the complexification end, actually. We work with very, very large clients globally, and do very complex things. But what we're going to talk about today is just some really simple ways of cutting out the crap, focusing on the key things that matter, and hopefully empowering your teams to make better decisions and operate kind of more seamlessly. Silver Bullet, just to give you a sort of a quick rundown, our aim is to help marketers make more, drive more value from their data, and so the end state of that for us is a frictionless flow of data, where we have strategy and kind of consulting energies in power. We move through to build, so we implement marketing technology, and then we activate on that marketing technology and market, and we help marketers drive value that way. We also have a data science offering that data science is a complex subject, but we try and really simplify it down. Data science is there for two things. One, it's to add power to the signals that your technology triggers from, and it's to add power to your people by helping them, more simply and clearly read what the environment's telling them about success or not success, as the case may be.
For that introduction. Now, before we jump into the presentation itself and have a chat about marketing and data and simplification, I want to
Sure.
say for those of you who haven't been on Growth Colony webinars before, please make sure if you have any questions in the middle, please make sure to drop it in the chat box. We do answer questions sometime in the middle of the conversation, but definitely towards the end as well. So please don't shy away from asking your questions in the middle whenever they come to you. And on that note, let's dive in, Tim.
Okay, so as Shaheen said, this is hopefully a choose your own adventure, and hopefully we can have more of a kind of conversational approach to it. Today, what I hope you guys get out of it is a great understanding of what I think the key 5 areas of marketing are that you need to simplify to get more out of your data. I hope also we're able to help you. A lot of marketers are pretty intimidated, in the data world. So we hope to sort of destigmatize it a bit and help you ask better questions, more powerful questions of data. I've seen in my time a lot of marketers really struggle, and they kind of like a rabbit down a hole, following the kind of trail of data, hoping data is going to answer the question for them. And actually that takes a lot of time. I mean, I was telling Shaheen yesterday about a client that I've had who really wasted totally wasted 3 years, but could have got faster to better outcomes if he just kind of implemented some of these things we're going to talk about. And so what we're really going to talk about is just a clear framework to align marketing, communications, tech, commercial drivers of business, and all those things that matter, teams, and the way teams work. So we're going to start with, those 5 key things. And so here they are. These are, simplify these to get more out of your data. The first one, and the most important one actually, is your strategic environment, or the way you view, marketing in your category and the consumer journey within your category. I see a lot of marketers who are very, very focused on kind of activation or getting campaigns out. But if you're always just getting campaigns out, you're always in the production cycle, you don't stop to think about your consumer journey or really kind of clearly align the role of your communications with that consumer journey, or clearly pull it down to KPIs, you end up having a lot of wastage, either with your agency partners or with your team partners. The second thing is capabilities. So we're really talking about, technology and systems. Data is an environment that can be quite complex and can be slow to, kind of implement or change. So the strategic environment, if you can get that right from the start, you can implement technology into that in a way that's going to be quite powerful, and help you deliver on the promise of data for your organization. Then the challenge becomes, how do you align your team around all of that? Because that might be quite different to the way they're used to operating. In team, I would include your CEO and CFO, so board level stakeholders, as much as kind of teams on the ground day to day. Get them buying into the framework you're creating and the direction that you're going, and things will be a lot easier down the track. Measurement comes into this, because clearly we need to measure against the things that matter and try to ignore the things that don't matter. And that's how we simplify, right? We cut out the stuff that doesn't matter. And then finally, we're going to talk about activation. And simplifying activation, to me, is not about reducing the amount of communications. It's not about reducing the number of people you talk to, but it's simplifying it in the sense that we're anchoring to the key things in that consumer journey, that matter. So we've really got sort of 2 things. One is strategy, kind of what's your strategy? How do you think about your marketing strategy? And then we've got operations, that is, how do you kind of implement that day in, day out? So we're going to start off with a bit of a definition of marketing. I know that it's a broad church here today, so it's useful to kind of get some of these things kind of locked down from the start. So, in my view, marketing is a structured system for predictable growth. In recent years, we've seen terms like growth hacking or growth marketing, being talked about more and more. I think it's all just marketing with a different label. Marketing is there to grow a business. Marketing is an investment a business makes in, marketing stuff, and you expect return on that. So all marketing should be growth marketing. There is no other marketing. I think that the fact that terms like growth marketing and growth hacking have come around is really just a testament to how misunderstood marketing is in some organizations. And I know a lot of marketers struggle to have kind of legitimacy from a business perspective. A lot of I've heard CEOs refer to marketers as the coloring in department or the arts and crafts department. And actually, I think marketing is an incredibly structured system, tried and tested system. Marketing investment should end up in robust growth. So there we go. So it's a structured system, and we're going to talk about what that structured system is. We will touch on brand, and brand is a confusing topic, and everyone has an attempt to identify or define it. My definition is that brand is the three things that people think or feel when they hear your name. It's very simple. And so the job of marketing is in part to build the things into people's brains and into people's hearts that are going to make them more predisposed to purchasing from that brand. The business case for marketing is that it makes your advertising work harder. It makes your advertising more efficient. If you have a strong brand, it gets from communication to signal in the brain and the heart faster. It's more resonant. It's going to make all of those kind of media dollars work harder. So sort of to kind of build on that point, I've created a very complex schematic of how brands work. You have a communication, and that someone hears that communication, sees that communication, experiences that communication, and that affects their heart and their mind. And it's the three things that are evoked in them when they see that communication. And so, in my view, brands are built through promises and experiences, and promises are delivered by communications, and experiences are delivered by communications, and purchase process and usage and service. And so when we think about brands, we think about how we can kind of manipulate those levers to improve, I guess, the value that potential customers see in our brand and the distinctiveness of that brand from other brands in our category. So when we're thinking about value, marketing is really about translating value from the factory floor to the potential consumer audience. And I've got a very simple equation that I use to define what value is through a consumer's eyes. And value is quality plus utility divided by price. So quality is really the experience of a thing. Utility is what the thing does. And price is the thing you exchange for that thing. So it's money, time, or it's optionality. It's I buy a car today, I can't buy a car tomorrow. That's an option I'm willing to give up because I think this car has good value. So if just to illustrate this point, people always buy for value. If we look at this beautiful Louis Vuitton handbag, what is the value someone gets from this? The experience they get is they get beautiful leather, they get weight. It weighs a bit. It's got a weight to it. It always works. Things don't fall through the bottom. The handles don't snap off. Functionality, it holds everything that I need. Obviously, I'm not going to use it when I'm skiing. I'm probably not going to use it when I'm riding a bike. But for moving around the city, it works very well. The other function is a social function. It makes me look superior to people on the street. It's communicating something about myself to people on the street. In terms of the things I exchange for this, the Louis Vuitton handbag has a fairly robust price. It's solid. It's a solid price, but it's not impossible. If I value those things, above the line, then I'm going to be willing to exchange these things below the line. And I'm okay if it spends all of my handbag budget for the rest of the year, and I'm okay not to buy another bag because I know this one's going to last and it's going to make me look great all the way through. People also exchange value, always engage for value with marketing communications. So if they're watching your ad, if they're looking at your ad on the internet or whatever, they're still exchanging value. So, this is the Lamb ad, I think, from last year. The experience is that it's entertaining. The function, not really much of a function. You could argue maybe it gives them something to talk about around the water cooler at work when ISO's off. And then the price is, it's free. You don't exchange any money to watch that because the landlord paid to put that on television. It's not much time. It's about 1.5 minutes, the full cut. and you're not compromising other options. So again, the value exchange equation works really well there. If you are talking about a retail ad, you know, a lot of us produce a lot of really kind of lower funnel sales driving kinds of communications. There's still a value equation in that. You might think of the value as the price that you're putting on the communication, but it's not really. The value is an equation around what you're advertising, what the price is, how it looks, you know, and I think a lot of the time around what your audience is doing at the time that they're, you know, presented with this ad, and whether they have time to look at it or not, and what their options are at that point in time. So, you know, that's a kind of rundown of marketing and brand and value. We're going to get into the 5 key pillars. The first one being the strategic environment.
Yeah, and before we do that, look, I really appreciate you sharing this equation. I know this is like this is the intro to the conversation that we're getting to, but this is really good because, you know, one of the cliche things that you hear quite often is people go and say, oh, you got to make sure you add value, right? And make sure you're adding value. And there's a very loose definition of what value is, especially during these times. I mean, you know, I've been guilty of it in the past where you're like, oh, you know, value. Let's give people some value. And what exactly is that value? What do we what is the tangible component to the value? And I really like how you know, kind of put this together, where there are different components. You're taking away, even when you're offering value, you're still taking something away from a consumer, whatever form of consumption that might be. So it's a really cool equation.
I mean, you could have the corporate value on the other side of that equation, right? And kind of think about, well, what is the value you're getting from either a communication or selling a product or whatever? And we could work on a simple equation for that. But I just think, you know, this is what as marketers, what we're here to do is we're here to create value above commodity, right? If you are working for a sugar company, you know, and you're a marketer, you want to brand that sugar so that it feels like a different product to the commodity competitor next to it on the supermarket shelf. And so marketing is about creating value, and we have a few different levers to create that value, and it's not all about price. You know, the price is really about us. It's also about the quality and the utility and the things that you think and feel when you're using a product or buying a product, and how you think it anchors into your daily needs. So this is a really good way of just kind of simplifying it. I'm really conscious today that there are some things that I'm going to sort of take you through that are so super simple. You know, that I feel like I'm probably telling you things you already know, but maybe reminding you of them and putting them in a context. And so that is what I hope the value is that I'm bringing today.
You know, we tend to complicate things as marketers, right? And I think there are multiple reasons for that. There's sometimes, as you said at the beginning, we might need to, if the company is not marketing oriented, right, which is very often in some of the Australian companies. You know, there's a lot more sales orientation in some of the companies. Some companies are more product oriented. We then tend to complicate marketing in order to sometimes justify it. Sometimes we just like the complication. We nerd out on the complication, and it's you know, it's cool. So I think there's a lot of value in terms of the whole simplification process, even though some of it might sound super simple.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, we're all human at the end of the day, and we're all working for organizations and want to show value. And sometimes I think you know, in an effort to do that, we do overcomplicate. You know, we go in and we kind of poke holes in things, or we see the exceptions to the rule. And really, this is not about that. This is about saying we're going to make a decision today about a simple way of going forward, knowing that we can unmake that decision tomorrow, or we can improve that decision tomorrow. But the benefit of following some of these things is just getting our team aligned, getting our organization aligned, and getting a simple way of thinking about everything kind of agreed upon. So simplifying the strategic environment. This is really, you know, 3 key things here. So who are our customers? How do they learn about and buy our brand or product, and then how will we track progress against those objectives? To your point about marketers in Australian businesses and very sales-focused environments, there is a whole talk track here about how marketers can help, I guess, prove their contribution to growth over time. It's not part of this session, but I am happy at the end of this session to take people through that, or you can get in touch with me, my email address, to sort of talk to me about how you might do that. Marketers generally, I think, need to get really, really good at talking a commercial conversation with CEOs and CFOs, and connecting what is marketing strategy and theory and practice with kind of commercial drivers of a business. So back to this: who are our customers? How do they learn about our brands or products, and how will we track progress against those objectives? So the first thing is really about who are our customers. And I have a simple sort of framework to think about this. It's a data-driven framework, which is quite important. In my time in advertising, I've got a lot of briefs that basically brief to everyone with a neck. And one of the key things about marketing is that it's segmentation. So figure out what the similar groups of people are in a market category, and then pick some of those groups to go after. Segmentation and targeting, right? So this is sort of a conversation about segmentation and targeting. And it's just a simple way of thinking about it. The first thing is almost, and there are exceptions to the rule, there's always exceptions to the rule, but almost every category can be broken into these two dimensions, which is innovation along the bottom and price along the side. And so innovation, if you're in fashion, it might be fashion forwardness. If you're in FMCG, you could argue that it's premiumness or something like that. But price is pretty universal. It's the price people exchange for it. You could factor in the time it takes to buy, or how hard you are to buy, or something. And that price can be broken into three key pillars, or three key tiers, I should say. So low, medium, and high. And you've always got, in most categories, you've got brands down the bottom and brands at the top, and maybe some brands in the middle that are more mass market kind of brands. And then you have consumers on that line, and usually the line kind of follows that. If you're a consumer with a big budget, you want lots of innovation or lots of premiumness or lots of fashion forward. If you're a consumer and you don't have much budget, you're prepared to sacrifice all of that. Sometimes you're more of a traditionalist, and so you might be high price but really low innovation. You want a more traditional product, like the products that were around when you grew up or something. But these consumers all cluster, and you can do this in a number of different ways. But if you map the consumers in your market through your market research or through something like Roy Morgan's single source, you can produce a chart like this, and you can figure out where the consumers are, relative to those two dimensions. You can figure out how many consumers there are in those segments, and you can put some value to them. And then you can overlay brands on that. And so this is just an automotive example, because automotive is just a really clear category to illustrate it. I've seen this done in beer. I've seen this done in sauces, soups, and things like that. So we can see that, once you overlay consumers and you overlay brands on that, and you see, imagine that you're Nissan and you're on this chart and you're kind of in the middle there in terms of consumer perception about where you sit, you can start to plot a path, right? You can start to say, well, we're going to go after, this or this target audience because we think they're going to grow more into the future, or it's going to allow us to win this group and that group. And so we're going to build a strategy to move from one to the other. It'll also help you filter out, we're not going for these guys, we're not going for those guys, we're not going for those guys, and start to really laser focus your efforts. And, focus brings effectiveness, right? So you might think you're sacrificing customers, but actually you're just getting better at winning the ones that you should get. And so step one is to figure out who your customers are and make some key decisions about who they are, so that your marketing can be really powerful. And the next step is to, for those audiences, figure out what the average consumer journey is. And we're not talking about a complex consumer journey. I mean, I just did a Google image search. These are sort of some types of consumer journeys we can get. the important thing to remember is that every consumer journey is there for a focused reason. None of them are necessarily wrong. But a complex one with 15 or 30 or 80 stages that I've seen in the past is not what we're talking about here. We're talking about a simple journey that can allow us to anchor our activities and our team and our technology onto, and help explain to everyone, what the hell we're doing. So this is a super simple journey. It's what is it? 5 stages, and we're talking about, now this is such a simple journey. You could argue that everyone in the world, for every brand in the world, is somewhere on this. So whether you have a brand that's just local to regional Victoria, or you have a big national brand, or you have a global brand, every consumer in the world is there. Obviously, if you're just a local regional brand, there's going to be a lot of people in the unaware. It's maybe not going to be that helpful. But generally speaking, you can take any kind of geographic area and you can kind of say, well, some people are unaware of us. Some people are sort of aware of us, but they can't tell a story about us. Some people are considering us, so we're kind of on their list of this evoked set or their selected set, if you're into consumer behavior. But they haven't bought us yet. Then some people have just bought us, and we've got to create an experience for them, or we want that purchase experience to be really good. And then some people are using us. And maybe if you're in a FMCG kind of situation, buy and use is really close together. In other situations where it's a bit more of a considered purchase, buy and use are a bit further apart. Use can be a really detailed stage, can be a really deep kind of experience. Sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's you've gone to the 7-Eleven and you've bought the chocolate bar and you've eaten it and you've finished it before you've kind of walked down the driveway. So this is a really simple model. And what do marketers do on this model? Marketers establish relevant anchors. In generating awareness, we need to establish, the really simple anchors, what category we're in, what kind of product, we sell, how quality that is, where it might fit in the consumer's life, but just big, broad things. When we're moving consumers into a consideration phase, we want to deepen meaning against those anchors. So we want to make it, and, one of my clients once said, I want consumers to be able to tell a story about my brand. So consideration is really, well, how do we get people telling a story about our brand and understanding what our brand is beyond our brand X does, makes packets of sugar, And then once people buy our product, we need to deliver on those anchors. We promise something in advertising and communications and in packaging, all that sort of stuff. We've got to deliver on it, man. It's got to be a good experience, as good an experience as we can make it. So where we get to in this is we get to a situation where we've got 2 key pillars, and I've seen consumer journeys, and I wouldn't say it's detailed enough, it's too simple, but consumer journeys are simply just acquisition and retention. I think you need to get a bit more detailed in that. So I think you should be trying to go to 5 stages, maybe 6 stages. If you get up to 7, 8, 9, it's going to be just become harder to communicate to your team, and it won't be that simple kind of framework to help organize your all your assets and resources. So where we get to is, at the start of this journey, we get brand awareness campaigns. Consideration to buy is, sales activation campaigns. And then, things that try and keep people going around that circle are really retention and upsell campaigns. And that's the job of marketing.
And Tim, do you know of a brand that does this really well? So when they're putting their anchors in place, those anchors are very clear. When they're looking at the consideration stage, they move people through that very, very nicely. Does anything come to mind right now? I know I kind of might have put you on the spot, but
just the boring example of Apple, really. I mean, Apple do a great job of anchoring to creativity and technology and seamlessness and experience and stuff in Aware. And then when you get into consideration, they're starting to talk about features and functions and usage applications of their products. And then they make that journey from consider to buy really seamless. Their purchase experience is great. Just reading the comments here from Phil. It's a bit distracting. you know, they do a great job. Automotive is another example of where you've got really clear definition between the different stages. It's a bit different, automotive, because it's the second sort of largest purchase we make as consumers, after our house. But, you know, awareness is about, you know, what does Nissan stand for different to Tesla, different to Audi, different to BMW, or different to, I don't know, Rolls-Royce or Holden or whatever. And then in consideration, the communications are often about a model and features and benefits of that model, or, you know, aspects of the car. And then the sort of, you know, the retail promotion, the sales promotions are, here's a price point, you know, run, you know, what is it, you know, run out offers, or, you know, drive away price kind of stuff. And we know, you know, that drive away price works really well, but we also know that that's potentially bringing forward, you know, a purchase that they already would have made, so it lowers their margin over time. So, you know, moving from this, I think the key thing is, and to pull back to consumers, the key thing about this is to remember that you will have different consumer groups that have different attitudes and behaviors at different stages of that funnel. This is, I can't tell you who this is, but this is a sort of, you know, a summary version of an actual client that I've had in the past, where they had a challenge in appealing to middle-aged men. So what they had was, middle-aged men were aware of the product, but had, you know, felt that they had no reason to buy it whatsoever, whereas women were in it. And I don't usually like to be that gender specific, but that's literally how the data kind of cut when we did the research. You know, so women of all ages and stages wanted this product. It was totally applicable to men, you know, but they didn't have a reason to buy it. So really what the recommendation was to them was to say, look, your big awareness campaigns, the campaigns that are really big and broad, you know, they need to really speak a message to those middle-aged men. Doesn't mean it has to have a middle-aged man in there. Doesn't mean the copy has to say, men, this is why you should buy our product. But it means that it should speak to the innate drivers of behavior with those men. Whereas for women, we could do some more, you know, targeted content. We could do some more, you know, content in more intimate channels that meant that the messages weren't confused, but were directly to, you know, to those people who just needed a bit of a push, you know, to buy the product. So these journeys can be, you know, applied kind of really well and really flexibly for different audiences and different situations that you find yourself in. So moving on, the key thing at this point is to then start to get really clear and succinct about what you need to do with what audiences at which stages of this journey, and start to align this journey to how you're going to measure success over time. So this is an illustration. I just want to put this out there. This is an illustration for top level examples. Every business is different. Every category is different. Please don't take this as a recommendation for your business. Take it with a grain of salt, as it's intended. So we have our journey here. It's a linear articulation of the same journey that you've seen before. And so on this journey, we can think about, as a brand, as a marketer, what we want our customer impression to be. In my definition, a customer impression is when we've communicated to them, when we've given them an experience and they walk away from that, what are they thinking about our brand? What have they remembered about our brand? What do they feel about our brand? So, you know, there are different types of impressions that you want to give to consumers on this journey. And we need to think about what they are very clearly. Then what we can do is we can append to that a business objective. So I'll take awareness, for example. So we want consumers to think that our brand has products that might be just right for them. That's pretty broad. You could get more specific if you're using a specific brand. And then in business objectives, we're talking about our objectives here aren't to create a sale, because what we've got to do is establish our brand in people's minds, right? So objectives are, we want to maximize the depth of visitors to the website. So we want visitors to our website to come and explore. We want to maximize the reach and the impact of media, and we do that through targeting and depth content, right? We want people to feel more emotional about our product. We want them to think more kind of critically or deeply about our product. And our key objective, I guess, at the end of the day is to get into the consideration set. Really simple. We just want to be on the list. We want people to be in the category and be on the list. Our barriers to that are we probably, like most brands, have limited budget. So we've got to kind of treat that respectfully. Consumers are sport for choice. It's a challenge for every single brand out there. There's so much stuff to pay attention to. We've got to cut through. That's why creative is really important. To get your creative to be well produced, funny, interesting, whatever it is. Consumer apathy is the biggest competitor that every brand and category has because of that, and product market fit issues. So we might have a product that's not quite right, and we need to work hard to get that value translated to an audience. Then we can get channels onto that. So how are we going to do those things? Different channels, and then KPIs. So how are we going to measure success at each stage? We don't have to have 1,000 KPIs. When you go into Google Analytics or something and you look at the number of metrics that you can look at there, you can be that rabbit down a hole. My suggestion would be sit at the surface, take a big look at, take a simplified look at that, and then go into those tools to get those key metrics and come out. Try not to get distracted along the way, otherwise you'll get a lot of time sucked. So in this case, for awareness, we're measuring the number of visitors to the website, or possibly the number of page views on the website, average time on site potentially, or number of products viewed. Maybe we could be looking at some brand tracking. So we could be looking at ownership of brand metrics versus competitors. How well are we establishing those key anchors versus our competitors? And I've worked for some companies who, in their brand kind of strategy, their brand onion or their brand house or whatever, have a dimension that they want to own in market, but their competitor is tens of percentage points ahead of them. And so, the key thing is, what can we own? What do we own? How are we really putting all of our money and our investment and our energies behind owning those things? If we think it's important to win, then we should be investing in it, right? Okay. Are there any questions we need to ask along the way?
Point. I think it's so important to have those business questions early on, and then come back and look at the go dig for the numbers, right? Just like you said, rather than go and hey, this is a plethora of data. Where do I start? That could be extremely paralyzing. It could be extremely hard to derive information from. So having that in your kind of rows that you have there, identifying what business objectives are, and then saying, all right, what kind of questions do I want to ask based on that, and what kind of answers do I want to get, and then go and looking at the numbers is probably a much easier way to go about it. Now, I think we got one question from Pretty, which is, now I'm not completely sure about this. ACS's CBOK, SFIA, and the relationship with industry. Do we need clarification on that, Tim? Or yes,
I think we do. I think we do. There's some TLAs I've never heard of. Oh, really?
All right, sounds good. Pretty. If you could clarify a little bit on that question, that would be great. We'll go back to it and address it for sure.
I thought I knew all the acronyms.
Yeah, I think I'm tapping out here with acronyms, so it's all on you now, Tim. But
all right.
Also, if you guys, anybody has questions, please make sure you drop it in the chat. And we got
good question from Amelia here. That's a good question.
What considerations should be made when applying this framework to B2B?
Okay, so I think that this framework is equally applicable to B2B as it is for B2C. I've worked for quite some time, in marketing tech companies, and I know that the journey, the B2B sales journey in that is a lot more intricate than a consumer sales journey would be, and so. I wouldn't say that the journey is necessarily more difficult, but it's more complex because of the stakeholder relationships. And so all I'd say is that in your planning, around a B2B sale, and when you're looking at tactics and you're looking at some of the material that you produce as part of that, or the experiences you create as part of that, like experience such as a demo or an event or whatever, they just need to be thought of with a bit more detail because of that kind of stakeholder or audience environment.
Yeah.
But the B2B sale is the same as a B2C sale because you're moving humans towards a purchase decision. It's different than a B2C sale because the amount you know about someone is much higher. The amount they know about you is much deeper. And the kind of hand-to-hand combat is much more intimate in that. So, so you just need to acknowledge that. But I think this applies equally.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I think a couple of things to just build on that is probably, Amelia, it's probably a bit longer. That duration could be in terms of time period, longer period when you're building awareness, you're going through consideration, and you're making a buying decision compared to B2C. And the other thing is, just like you mentioned, there are multiple people you got to take into consideration. Depending on the type of B2B sales or B2B product that you're selling. If it's a $20 gadget with no lifetime value, no upsell and cross-sell opportunities in it, well, that's going to be much closer to a B2C deal. But if it's a $20,000 average contract value sale in the B2B, then you're going to have multiple decision makers. In the awareness stage, you got to build awareness for multiple different people in order for the purchase to happen. In the consideration, you got to address multiple people's concerns about that purchase, where sometimes, well, most of the times probably in B2C it will be one person, unless you're talking about those big purchases like a house, that there's maybe a couple needs to make a decision. Sometimes a family needs to make a decision. But I think those are some of the major differences. But you're absolutely right. In terms of stages, they go through the same process as well.
I think probably also, as I was thinking about it, to use software sales as an example, you're probably talking about, you need to think about this journey as an individual's journey rather than a kind of a sales journey, if you like. So, if you're talking about an account that you're trying to win, at the end of the day, you can't think of this journey as the account's journey. You have to think of this as the individuals within that. So this is why it tends to be that you generate awareness with one person and they pull you into the organization and you do a demo to their boss and their team and whatever. But each of those stages kind of need to then recap and bring everyone up to that point of kind of consideration, if you know what I mean. So one way to do this might be to think about the account and think about it as one person that you're trying to move through to purchase. But actually, you need to understand that it's not just one person, it's a network of people. And so we need to think of ways to get everybody up to the same point and up to, kind of a tick in terms of the decision making at the end of the day. So it is more complex, network of effects.
Sounds good. Well, let's answer one more question, then follow through with the presentation from Kim. Suggestions on ways to ensure that awareness marketing is highlighted to be just as important as consideration and intent. So what are the suggestions to basically making sure that it is as important? Issue faced currently for me around ensuring that we are also putting enough work into acquire new customers. Brand awareness is seen as fluffy for us in this current climate. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, that's a big one, Kim. I'm not sure what category you're in or what brand you work for, so it's hard for me to be specific, so I apologize. I think the key thing here is that marketers need to better fashion retail. Okay. All right. Fashion retail is probably struggling right now. Marketers always need to pin the investment they're creating in their tactics to a commercial outcome. That's really easy when you're a digital retailer and you're buying search ads and you can demonstrate through digital tools that an ad here led to a purchase there. What gets difficult is when it turns into a situation where you're buying out of home, or you're buying TV, or you're buying print or something, and it becomes a lot more broad. So there's a couple of different ways that you could try. So the first way is just to go back to your data and see if you can find some connections between kind of big awareness investments that you might have made and some sales peaks. I think the secret is all in data. So if you can create a connection between an investment in sort of awareness driving activities with sales at the end of the day, you can do a ratio on that, and you can say investing in these broad activities turns into this many dollars behind the till. The second way to do it, and I'll pull out, I didn't mean to do this, I'll pull out a book. There's this book by Les Binet and Peter Field. Can you read that? Yeah. Called Effectiveness in Context. It's just been published by the IPA in the UK. And basically this is about that question. It's about long-term investment or investment in long-term sort of brand equity building activities versus short-term investment in sales driving activities. And they break that relationship down, or the optimal relationship down, into different categories. So effectiveness in context builds on a body of work that's about 10 years long. They started 10 years ago, and they've been building and building and building on this. It's based on effectiveness studies from the IPA in the UK, and it's a really great resource. So you can kind of go to that, the book learning route. The third route you can go is to get an organization like mine involved and put some really smart data science onto the question to really connect the different types of activities and the different strategic objectives of those activities with kind of an end outcome. And we say there's really three key things that marketers need to try and demonstrate. One is the effectiveness of their activity on both the long-term effects and short-term effects. The second is the impact of marketing above baseline. So baseline would be if you turn marketing off tomorrow and let it run for a year, what would you get? So marketing is there to create incremental return, right? So we need to create a case where we can demonstrate that. And then the third thing is to create a really handy dandy ROI metric so that the business knows that $1 in marketing equals $10 in sales, and that will really help your efforts. But I recommend getting this book. You can buy it from the IPA. I think it's ipa.co.uk, and it's an amazing resource. Sorry. No worries, Kim.
And see how much of it we can go through. We got 10 minutes. Let's do it.
Okay, so I guess really where we're getting to now is sort of operations. So I'll just go back to a previous slide for a sec. So when we're talking operations, we're talking about technology capability, team organization, measurement, and activation. Now, I hope you'll agree that from that one kind of master consumer journey, as we call it, and laddering down through all those stages, we've already got a lot of kind of clear framework and clear kind of direction in there. But what we can do is we can start to build on that framework a little bit more, and we can start to look at how technology connects into that, what our agency environment's like, or our internal, a lot of marketers have internal teams as well. So what those teams, how they fit into the mix. And so the way I would do that is I'd use the same journey. So, we've got our key channels, touch points or tactics that we're using for each stage. The build isn't so great here. I'll just, sorry guys. We've got tech that drives that. This is basically connecting tech to channels and saying, well, this is how we're going to activate on those things. We've got key data sets. Those data sets exist within that tech, sit within that tech and drive communications. And then key partners sort of operate on the tech, if you like, operate on the tech and kind of have a role to play to drive those things. One of the important things around key partners is really being very, very clear about their remit. I know, having worked in agencies, that we're always constantly trying to stretch the scope of our engagement. That leads to us working overtime on things that maybe we shouldn't be working on, or asking questions we shouldn't, we shouldn't be asking, because we should be just focused on getting an ad done, right? And so, understanding how your key partners connect into that is really important. And then from all of that, you should be able to say, well, what are our key gaps? And I've just given I haven't actually given gaps here. I've given some questions that you might want to ask. So, are you able to connect your market segmentation to your digital audiences? So can we take that segmentation that we looked at before, take those audiences, and can we then pull that through all of our activity, be it above the line, below the line, to use those terms, or digital, non-digital, whatever? Can we pull those segments through and measure our effectiveness at converting them from one stage of the journey to the other? Are we assessing the effectiveness of our channel investment fairly? So, what we know about marketing is it's a network of effects. You put a TV ad on air today, and then you get an uplift in website visitation tomorrow. So how are we kind of evaluating that and looking at the interrelationships between all of the touch points that we're investing in? Are we able to quantify how many consumers we have at each stage of the journey? For people who have a digital background, sometimes it takes a little while to kind of get your head around this. We don't actually need to create a causal linkage between one stage and another. We don't need to know that Shaheen he's now aware of us, and now he's moving into consideration. I mean, it would be great if we could, but we don't have to. If we want to track success as marketers, we can just take an estimate of where we're at based on the number of different things and KPIs, keep it stable. And that helps us understand, well, we think we've got, if we're a B2B marketer, it's easy. If we're a B2C marketer, maybe a bit harder. But we can say, well, we've got X number of people in this bucket, X number of people in that bucket. So over time, as our populations of those buckets increase or decrease, we can track success. Are we able to estimate our kind of brand leadership on the associations that matter? Getting back to the example that I mentioned before. All these questions are really important, and I'm just going to skip forward to other questions. All these questions are really important to answer on the way through, and I think if we can connect those questions to those stages of the journey, suddenly we've got this backbone that can help really drive simplicity in our marketing and simplicity in the way we work, and help our teams ask the right questions on the way through.
Give Pretty's question one more attempt, right? So Pretty has a couple of the acronyms that were in her question, and her question was, I'm just scrolling up. So advanced communication systems, common body of knowledge, or skill frameworks for the communication age. And then the question goes, sorry, I'm just scrolling up and down to finish the question, and their relationship with industry. Okay, so I'm still not really, I'm not 100% Pretty with these, but I can riff on them. Yes, Pretty, if you could rephrase your question, it would be great, just for us to get our head around what is it exactly that we're trying to answer here. That would be awesome. So look, but I can kind of riff on some of this stuff. So I'm assuming advanced communication system is like MarTech stack, intelligent sort of decision making on communications and things. We're strategic partners with Adobe, Salesforce, Oracle, and we work with some of the more complex implementations of all of this, this is the kind of recommendation I give to a lot of marketing teams, big or small, because a lot of marketing teams, it's really complex. You get 3 people in a room and you've got different opinions, and it's really hard to wrangle, right? Unless you have these simple, we're just dumb humans at the end of the day, unless you have these simple frameworks, everything's just going to be all over the place, and you're going to be mixing up tactics with strategy, and it gets very hard to manage. So regardless of whether you have an infinite budget for high-tech communications and artificial intelligence and machine learning implemented in your system, these things are still really valuable. Common body of knowledge.
I'm assuming by that you mean how do we create a kind of a central point where we are have a kind of way of working that's agreed and a kind of definition of how we're going to market and those kinds of things. I agree. I think having a strategy distilled in a way that everyone can access and everyone can understand and everyone can ask questions is really important. And then skill frameworks for the information age, I can only imagine that means what kinds of skills do you need to do well in this kind of emerging environment? And I'd say, not that you need to be a data scientist, but you need to be comfortable with data and comfortable with asking questions of data. I think it's perfectly fine to have a data scientist who knows all of the intricacies of kind of uncovering the meaning in data, but as a marketer, you need to be able to be comfortable with it and understand below the surface level what goes on there. We actually offer a lot of training in connecting strategy with complex things like data science or MarTech, because what we want to do is empower marketers to manage better in this environment. And these skills, in my opinion, are not, are not optional. They're essential skills for marketers to do well right now. Tech and data science and those kinds of things are things that marketers need to be able to kind of get their head around.
Fantastic. Okay. Well, look, we have 3 minutes left, right? We have one question from Anne. Now, and first, there are a couple of things that I want to mention. First of all, we have a Slack channel, growthcolony.org/Slack, where we will answer these questions. Afterwards, Tim, I'm not sure if you had a chance to jump on, but if you have these questions, we definitely can address them over there. And if you bring them over there, we'll make sure that happens. By the way, on our Slack channel, we share recordings, we share the slides, we share the events that are coming up. So there is a bit of value of signing up to the Slack community. Alex might just pop the link there. We go. Thank you very much, Alex. Yeah. Read my mind. But also, Tim, if anybody, this was an amazing presentation. If anyone wants to reach out to you and have a conversation with you or want to know more about you, what is the best way people can do that?
Well, you can email me. My email address is at the bottom of the screen now. Email me. I'll be running a series of just free meetings, one-on-one meetings with anyone who wants one. I'm not sure how many I can do, but I will try. So get in touch with me at that email address or through the Growth Colony Slack channel. So put your hand up, say that you're interested, and I'll get in touch and we'll organize something.
Sounds good. And on that note, thank you very much for everybody for jumping on the webinar. Really appreciate your time as well, Tim. This was an amazing presentation. And we'll see you in the next one. Oh, actually, I have to talk about the next one. Alex, do we have a slide on the next presentation? I think the next one that is coming up is how to manage a. Alex just said not yet, but I'll give a quick brief about the next one that is coming up. The next one is how to manage a remote marketing team. We got a panel discussion for the next one. It's the panelists are amazing. We got the marketing director for Catapult. We got the marketing manager from Who Gives a Crap, and we got Joe, who specializes in remote work. So definitely check that out as well. But until next time, we'll see you around. Thanks a lot, Tim.
See you guys. Thanks for joining.
Bye.
Bye.